Do you ever look at a set of dice and think, man, I really want to buy that, but it might be too expensive? You've always wanted that set of metal dice or precious stone, gemstone, or even that like higher tier like plastic or resin dice, but you're just like, I just don't know. Well, I get asked this question a lot, whether or not I would recommend a certain set of dice, certain style of dice, and then like which is better, metal or gemstone. So today I thought, let's just actually have a conversation about it, and I'm going to show you some of the different dice I have from each of the categories, talk about the pros and cons, and then let you decide what you think is worth it or not. So stick around, we're going to jump in and have a look at some wicked dice. We've also got memberships and Patreon available. Check out the social media at Instagram, Threads, and X, Rastov's End Dragons, and then come join us on Discord as well, where the community is growing day by day and we post all kinds of cool stuff on there. Alright, so what are we actually talking about when we're discussing these different dice types, right? So for me, plastic dice are generally like these sort of things. Usually made of like acrylic or resin or, you know, things like that. Something that if you had the right tools, you could make it at home. And it wouldn't be that hard. If you want proof of that, jump on the Discord, because we've got some really cool dice creators on there who make some beautiful stuff. You know who you are. You know, when we're looking at metal, we're generally looking at just, you know, dice like this that are made of metal in the same shape, and also specialist dice made out of metal that you couldn't really do with like plastic and acrylic. And if you could, it probably would be relatively flimsy. I'm personally not seeing anything cool like that. Now, when I'm talking about things like gemstone and precious stone and that sort of thing, I'm also looking at things like my tiger's eye dice and also frosted glass kind of rainbowy dice here as well. So these are the types of things that we're going to be looking at when we're talking about the pros and cons, as I try and figure out my camera. Alright, so we're going to start with plastic dice. Well, let's start with the pros. Plastic dice are the most common dice out there. You go into any game store, it's likely that they're going to have a set of plastic dice for you to buy. You look online, hundreds if not thousands, actually there is definitely thousands of dice sets online that you can purchase. You are basically swimming in a sea of plastic dice if that's what you're looking for. There's also a huge amount of variety. They come in all different colors, shapes, sizes, they've got different fonts, all sorts of stuff. The styles of them vary as well. Like, even take a look at what we've got in front of us here, right? We've got all different kinds of dice styles. These ones are probably the most similar, and even then they're very different. So I'm not really up on the lingo of what you would call each style. If it was up to me, it would be like clear with a bit of color and then some glitter inside. You've got swirl, and then sparkle swirl, and then resin with some stuff in it. So you get what I mean. There's just so many different styles. So because of how easy they are to find, it means that they're relatively easy to make when compared to the other ones. So if you hunt and hunt and hunt, and you can't find what it is that you're looking for, which honestly is probably unlikely because it's probably out there somewhere, someone can make it for you. Within reason, obviously. There's no shortage of people that make dice on the internet. We've got people in our Discord that make beautiful dice and post photos of them, you know? So there's always going to be an ability for you to get something that you want. Now, from a more practical point of view, they're very light. Easy to store. You know, I have dice bags that have probably 12 sets in them. They don't weigh anything really, so you can have as many as you want as long as you've got the space to put them. And when you roll them in a dice tray, there's very minimal chance of there ever being any damage done to it with a plastic dice, which is something that you can't really say for the others. And finally, price. They are so accessible, so easy to find, there's no shortage. You can get them as cheap as possible or as expensive as possible, but probably not as expensive as the other ones. So they are affordable. You could probably buy, depending on the style of dice that you got or the ones that you're looking for, you could probably sometimes get 10 sets of plastic dice for one set of metal dice. On to the cons! Look, truthfully, there aren't as many cons as I thought there would be, and I spent quite a decent whack of time actually trying to think of what cons were for plastic dice. Dice are pretty awesome, so there's not usually a lot of cons in general. But imperfections are probably the biggest con that plastic dice have. You can get things like air bubbles on the inside, or they didn't fill out the mold properly so that they're unbalanced and uneven, which means that you can't really roll them. Because they're a lot more accessible, it's actually a lot easier to find someone with the same kind of dice. If they're cheap enough, everyone could have them really. Whereas you don't really get that with the metal and gemstone dice. And finally again, price. You get what you pay for. Even though they're reasonably priced and affordable, if you buy a $5 set of dice, you're going to get a $5 set of dice, okay? So sometimes it's worth spending a little bit of extra to actually get a quality product. Just think about it. Alright, on to the metal dice. And again, we're starting with the pros. Now I might be a little bit biased, but they look awesome. Number one pro for me is they look fantastic. Look at these gold dice. I don't need to justify why they look cool. Look at it. So they've got fantastic quality. They're generally really durable, which means they're not going to wear out. It's very hard to get imperfections on metal dice because of the way that they cut them, which also means that you can't really get cheap dice. You can also have them customized with engraving. Now I've been trying to get this to work, so let's see if it does it this time. For the one time. Alright, come on, zoom. So you can see the fighter and the dragon on this dice are engraved and painted. Right? You can't really do that with plastic and gemstone because it affects the integrity of the dice. Right? But you can do it with metal. They do it with rings, they can do it with dice. There's a lot more customization as far as styles go. You've got just your regular metal dice, but then you also get things like these caltrop dice, which are kind of spiky, you know. There's also metal hollow dice, all other manners of different kind of metal dice out there. So they're also really reliable to actually roll. You don't get a lot of bounce with metal dice, so you just kind of roll them and whatever it lands on is whatever it lands on. Whereas when you compare it to like plastic dice, you generally get a lot of bounces, it bounces off a lot of stuff, whereas it's not really going to do that. So you've got a lot less, I guess, interference that can happen when you roll with metal dice. And again, we're on to the cons. So metal dice are obviously not as easy to access as, say, plastic dice. There's a lot less of them out there. It's a lot harder to find them in store. And honestly, things like the caltrops and even just general like metal dice can actually damage your dice tray. I bought a set online that was similar to this but a lot more spiky, and the first time I rolled it in my old dice tray, it took a big chunk out of the velvet. So you've got to be really careful when rolling the metal dice, particularly if you've got one that's quite sharp. Even the D4s can be quite sharp, so you just have to be mindful of that. As far as price goes, they are expensive. You can get some reasonably priced ones, like these caltrop ones were almost half of the price of these ones. So you can get some cheaper metal dice, but ultimately you get quality for what you pay for. So it is a con as because it's not as easy to access, generally because of the price as well. You do get what you pay for. Now the pros list is a lot shorter for gemstone and precious stone dice than it is for the others. But what they do have going for them, they clear everything else in just street shoots really. Gemstone, precious stone are beautiful. They are probably the most beautiful dice I've ever seen, and having them, it feels amazing. They look fantastic. I know that they are completely unique, and the ones that I have, no one else is going to have ones exactly the same as mine. They're handmade collector's items. There's not really much more to say. They do feel really nice when you do roll them, albeit it does make you a bit nervous, but we'll get to that. They do feel really nice when you roll them. They're really smooth. They're quite, they're really nice to hold. They look great. Fantastic display pieces for sure. And on to the cons. They are the hardest dice to get your hands on, and they are the most expensive. because of how precious they are and how expensive they are, you almost don't want to roll them. Like, even just doing the quick roll that I did with the blood, like crimson ones, I felt nervous because they are so precious that I feel like they could chip, they could crack. They're generally just more, I think, collector's pieces, especially the glass ones. I think the stone ones, kind of like, you know, how we've got the amethyst ones, the obsidian, tiger's eyes, those would probably be a lot better to roll, but I wouldn't want to roll them with multiple dice at once, and I would probably want to do it outside of a dice tray on a soft surface, if I'm being honest. They're fantastic to have, but you've just got to be really careful. And they are expensive, so if you got one and you damaged it, it would feel horrible. So there you have it. Those are the pros and cons of having plastic, metal, and gemstone dice, as according to me. If you disagree, fantastic, let me know why. If there's something you think I missed, please let me know in the comments. Honestly, it was really hard to find cons for all of them outside of, like, plastic dice. Because the reason that I feel so confident about buying so many dice is because I know that most of the, like, I've not had a bad product yet. I've bought sets and sets and sets of all of the above, and I've not had a set of dice that was bad. There's been some dice that have gone to dice jail, but none of them have been, like, actually quality bad. You know, so really, it's going to come down to what you find most valuable, what you like. You might think that metal and gemstone dice look like crap, and so you won't buy them, and that's totally fine. But I hope that that's kind of shed a little bit of light on the sort of things that I look at when I go for dice. And yeah, this was something a little bit different. I hate doing videos with lots of cuts in them, but I tried to do one takes of everything, and it was so hard. So I had no choice. So hopefully it's alright. Please give me feedback on that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments again. Please, please, please. I love it. Again, join us on Discord. Look at the social medias, Rastov's in Dragons, Threads, X, and Instagram. And yeah, if you could do me a massive favor, watch a video that you haven't watched before. Take care, guys. See you later. Peace.